How's it hanging? Welcome to another video, and this particular video is something I've been thinking about today, and I figured I'd share it. I don't know if what my subscribers, I don't know. I'm guessing you've all got a broad spectrum of tastes and thoughts on gaming, but I've been playing a lot of Sega Saturn, and specifically I've been playing Dracula X, well, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, to PlayStation owners, most people in the Western world, right? Anyway, I've been playing this game, and the game is unbelievable. I mean, the game, I've never played it properly. I've never given it a fair chance. I've always had this thing about Castlevania. I've always figured that it's basically just a platform game. That's, you know, what I mean. What an idiot. But yeah, basically I used to think, you know, it's just a very hardcore, very difficult to play platform game. Well, I'm playing Dracula X. All the locales, all the things in the game are unbelievable. I mean, graphically, I mean, obviously, you know, nowadays there's a lot of things out there, high definition. There's tons of stuff that surpasses it, obviously. But looking at it from a realistic standpoint, the graphics, unbelievable. I've never seen it like it, and the music, oh my god, amazing. So it got me thinking about 2D gameplay versus 3D gameplay. There's a lot of 3D games on the Saturn which, when you rack them up against the PlayStation, when you sort of measure them up, they're not up to scratch. Kind of inferior 3D engines, all that crap. And basically that's why the Saturn got a bit of a bum deal. That's why people kind of switched off to the Saturn. I think that's wrong. Completely wrong. So wrong. In fact, it's a sham. You know, it's a bit of a travesty. I think that the Saturn could have existed if there wasn't such a push for 3D. I mean, I'm looking at the catalogue of games. I mean, the majority of the games I've got are like 2D fighters, 2D type games anyway. So I'm looking at those and I'm thinking, God, I mean, the art, the style, the way that the games are made. I mean, even the games like X-Men vs Street Fighter, you know, just even Street Fighter games, just beautifully done, just so beautifully done. And the Saturn to me is the pinnacle of 2D, and that is truly the console for 2D. Maybe that, I don't know, maybe you agree, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but basically, I think that 2D, it's more, 2D gaming is it's a much better experience. It's a much more thrilling, appealing experience than 3D. There's a lot of innovation in 3D, and nowadays 3D is kind of like 2D now, sort of thing. But I mean, a lot of it's down to the FPS, you know, it's the FPS engines and things like that. I like 3D games. I still play 3D games. Don't get me wrong, but 2D games, there's so much nostalgia wrapped up in 2D games. I mean, 8-bit stuff, 16-bit era, Mega Drive, SNES, all that kind of thing. So it's all steeped in that kind of thing. However, the Saturn, and to some extent the Neo Geo, these machines are kind of just the absolute pinnacle of 2D, and I want to see a kind of renaissance of that. I want to kind of see a revival of that in modern terms. I'm going through games at the moment on the Saturn, and I'm just having a whale of a time. I mean, this, as I say, Dracula X to me is unbelievable. It's like, wow, you're looking at the light. I mean, you know, it's kind of, they call it Metroidvania, right? Which I don't like that phrase. I think it's a shit phrase. But basically, the idea is you've got a massive world, and you know, you've got a massive load of levels, and you've got to backtrack sometimes to get to other areas, and then you get new power-ups and new bits and pieces to give you access to other areas that you couldn't before. Blah blah blah. Basically, the area that I mean, don't get me wrong, all the areas are amazing in their own way, but the library, for some reason, it really struck a chord with me. When you're going through the library to get to the master librarian to buy and sell your goods, there's this beautiful bit where it's kind of like you can see into the background, so you can see the multi-layered parallax scrolling, and it's unbelievable. The depth of it is unbelievable. And as I say, I always understood that the Saturn was a powerful machine, but it's taken something like that to really show me what it is capable of doing. I mean, obviously games like Virtua Fighter 2 and stuff like that, I know it sounds a bit stupid, but like Virtua Fighter 2 it runs at 60 frames a second, and it's got kind of like a high resolution graphics mode on it, if you look at it closely. And that is truly an amazing game in terms of what it gives you, what it shows the Saturn's capable of doing. But it doesn't, I know it sounds silly, but it just doesn't innovate the way that, it doesn't show you what the machine's capable of in comparison to something like 2D. The only bad thing about Dracula X is that there's slowdown there. When there's a lot happening on the screen, there's a lot of slowdown, which kind of shows you what it's having to go through to make it work, sort of thing. And there are 3D bits in it. If you look closely at some of the backgrounds, especially on stages that are outside, that have maybe buildings in the background or whatever, you can see 3D aspects to it. So it really is, it's interesting. But to me, in spite of these little elements, these 3D elements, the game's totally 2D in my mind. In my mind, the artwork, everything about it, and I just think that when we look at games, when we look at the 2D versus 3D thing, all of our favourite games, and I'm including most people that I know in this, everything that they ever mention about nostalgia, about history, about what they've played in the past, they never really mention games. Not a lot of people mention games that were 3D. A lot of people that I know always, mention games on the PlayStation that aren't necessarily, that were 3D really. If anyone remembers Gunner's Heaven, I can't remember what they call it in the West, but it's like Gunstar Heroes. People went crazy, over that. But I don't know. I mean, some of my friends are really crazy, to be honest with you. So maybe I'm judging the majority on the minority. I don't know. But for me, everything about gaming started with 2D. That seems obvious, but everything that makes games what they are now is based on 2D. That is to say, I'm not just on about things like Spectrum and the start of the dawn of gaming or whatever. I'm on about, if you think of that transition, if you think of that period of time when the Saturn and the PlayStation came out for the first time, and you look at some of the games, there was that sort of push for 3D. But if you look at a lot of the Saturn titles that came out the first wave, things like Clockwork Knight and that kind of thing, they've got 3D elements, but they're still kind of steeped in that 2D sort of feel. I mean, even Knights, it's completely 3D, right? But it's still basically, it still works on one plane in a 2D way. Everything that we now take for granted, I think, has come from those kind of elements of 2D kind of mixed with 3D sort of thing. For me, though, there's always a place for 3D, of course, but for me, 2D is a much more appealing. I find myself getting much more engrossed in a 2D game than I do in a 3D game, and I can't understand why that would be. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird or something. I don't know. But trying to explain it is difficult. But basically, what I'm saying in a roundabout way is 3D is great and all. Love 3D, love the 3DS, love all that kind of stuff. But everything down to the gameplay elements, the gameplay style, the engine, the way the game's crafted or whatever. I like that 2D style. I like pixel art, basically. I like the idea of really well-made graphics. I love the idea of, I mean, if you look at some of the scenes in Dracula X, like when you meet the succubus for the first time and it looks like Maria hung like on a cross kind of thing, and there's all these people like watching, like old-fashioned kind of hanging medieval-esque style thing. I'm like, wow, that's pretty friggin' awesome. But it's the same principle with things like Police Notes. I mean, the engine of that ain't even an engine, it's just a load of pictures, right, basically, in a roundabout way. And it's just a load of pictures that have been brought, that are on the screen there. So, I mean, apart from the shooting section, I mean, even the shooting section's kind of just scaled graphics, right? But it's just so beautiful. I mean, I'm still, to this day, I still am engrossed by Police Notes, the game, the world, the experience. I've played the game now maybe 3 times, all told, right the way through, from start to finish, and blew me away every time. You know, I would happily go back to it again. There's loads of layers to it. Snatcher, same kind of thing. Even the Mega CD version, which is basically 16-bit, the graphics are basically 16-bit if you think of it that way. You know, the artwork's beautiful. It's just brilliant. I mean, even if you scale it up to the Saturn and the PlayStation versions, if you can get over the Japanese, the actual graphics are yet better still. But in some, it's so interesting because there's so much. I've been really lucky because I've been involved. I've had consoles up to the Xbox 360. I've been really lucky. My parents, my family, they've all sort of chipped into my hobby. And I've been really fortunate to get involved in these machines. So I've always had, although not so much nowadays, but I've always had that sort of cutting edge thing. You know, I've always been at the forefront, so to speak. You know, I've been really lucky in that respect. And I can't remember a 3D game that I really desperately wanted to go back to. Maybe Soul Calibur, maybe Soul Calibur 2, something like that. I mean, all the games that I played that were 2D to begin with and then went into 3D, for example, like Sonic and things like that, the 3D games, they're just not, they're not the same, and they never could be the same. I've got Sonic Generations on the 3DS, and it is not Sonic. It's not Sonic, you know. It's not that game, you know, that you played when you was a teenager. It's not that game that sends shivers down your spine when the screen's like going ape shit with the speed. You know, it's just not the same. I understand that it's technically good and it's a very competent game and all, but I will remember it. You know, it's a very easily forgetful game. It's a good game, but it's very easily forgetful. I remember I was really fortunate to have an Atari Jaguar back in the day. I got, well, I didn't own it. A friend of mine had Rayman, and we played Rayman. And I'm blown away by this game. You know, this game is unbelievable to me. You know, and it's all 2D. I played Rayman 2 on the Dreamcast, and I thought that was a really decent game. I played through it, and I was quite pleased by it. I was quite surprised by it, to be honest. I was expecting it to be not very good. I've got Rayman 3D on 3DS, which is basically Rayman 2, but in, you know, with 3D stereoscopic crap. It's meh to me. What I'm saying is, guys, is 2D is beautiful, and 3D is kind of easily surpassed, easily forgotten. 3D is constantly evolving and constantly changing and constantly becoming something more. 2D is 2D, if that makes any sense. I mean, even the most amazingly graphically wonderful games, things like BlazBlue, if you remember that, it's probably a couple of years old now. They've probably done an update to it. The game is unbelievable. The graphics are unbelievable. I mean, even games like Super Street Fighter 2 in HD, you know, on Xbox 360, that kind of thing. The 2D is beautiful and everything, and that's great. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about 3D that's just it's kind of forgettable. You can move on, kind of thing. But as I say, I'm playing this Dracula X, and it's gobsmacking. You know, I'm a 30-year-old man, and I'm like 15 again. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm 15, 16 again. You know what I mean? And it's unbelievable to me. I've never been able to play. I've never played a game in the modern era, everything past 2003, that has given me that kind of wow factor. I don't know, maybe I'm unique in that, I don't know, but I've missed the wow factor, and I found myself getting that excitement, that buzz from games and from consoles from the 90s, from years ago, you know? And I'm just thinking to myself, well, what's up with that? So there you go, guys. All I'm saying to you is, yeah, maybe 3D is great and all, and there's tons of innovation there, and we're constantly seeing wonderful things, and you know, games nowadays are all beautiful and shit. But what I'm saying is this bit. What gets you here? Does Call of Duty Black Ops 2 get you here? It done for me, to be honest with you. As much as it innovates, as much as it's got the lot, it don't get you there. Do you know what I mean? And as I say, I've picked up this game. I'm playing Dracula X, and it gets me right there. Do you know what I mean? It does your heart, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? And all I'm saying is, I don't seem to get that with 3D. I only ever get that in a 2D experience and stuff like that. So there you go. Alright guys, let me know what you think, and obviously if needs be, put me in my place, kind of thing. But yeah, basically guys, what I'm trying to tell you is 2D is real. Do you know what I mean? 2D is the best, and 3D, it's always going to be evolving, it's always going to be changing, so it's never quite... Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you think. See you in a bit, guys.